Nikola Jovic is struggling with Miami's offense, but will he ever play again for the Heat?
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $250, even better, in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com today to get started on today's show. We're talking about whether or not the offense has worked and if we think this should be the offense next season. We're also doing a deep dive on Nikola Jovic's struggles so far this season. But before we do all that, a major announcement. We are having a watch party at the Taurus in Coconut Grove for Heat at Wizards on April 10th. It's a Friday night. Full details will be shared on socials and on our YouTube communities page, including kind of when we're going to be there, the address. If you can't find it on Google yourself, it'll all be there. But we are expecting a big turnout and some surprises as well. We cannot wait to see you there. David, any words on that before we jump into the show?
Always looking forward to meeting everybody. It's going to be so much fun, always exciting. It's not even about the game. It's just about the community, about the fans. Everybody that listens to this show does so because they love the Heat and because we love all of them and we want their support and we want to talk to them. We want to meet them. And if they've been there before, they know how much fun it can be. So please join us again next Friday.
Has been a frustrating season at times, but this is a good chance for us all to get together. Maybe commiserate a little bit, celebrate the end of the season or the end of the regular season rather, and talk about all the things that we think might happen for the Heat going forward. But I want to start today's show with this piece from Barry Jackson in the Miami Herald that came out over the weekend. And it was a deep dive on Nikola Jovic. And Barry spoke with Nico after practice about Nico's struggles. And Jovic made his return in Saturday afternoon's game against Washington and then got hurt, sprained his ankle. And it looked bad at the time. Fortunately, it sounds like everything came back clean afterwards, and it's not going to be like a major injury. But, you know, he got some garbage time minutes at the end of that Wizards game. You hope that maybe that would be the start of some token minutes here or there, but now it looks like, yeah, probably not. And this has, in many ways, been a lost season for Nico, who, I don't know if you remember, said before the season opener that he was worried that if the team struggled, he would be the one that lost minutes. And that's exactly what happened. And it, not because the team struggled out the gate, because they got out to that 14-7 start, but when they have struggled, he's been the one on the bench. They obviously think that they can win without him, or they have a better chance of winning without him, rather. And, you know, the injuries obviously have been a major setback for him, but really it's been the offense that Nico has sort of zoned in on when he was talking about his struggles. He said this to Barry, quote, "Last year was easy because the offense we ran and the way we played, I kind of knew what my role was. This year, with an offense where you don't have calls and you don't really know where to be at what time, it's hard for me because sometimes I play the 5, sometimes I play the 4, sometimes I have the ball in my hands, sometimes I don't. It's hard because you never get similar looks. Last year, we ran a lot of plays and I kind of knew what looks I would get, so I could easily get more into my rhythm." End quote. I encourage everybody to go check out the full article on the Miami Herald because there's a lot of context in there and there's even more stuff from Nico, who, in fairness, is owning up to the struggles being his fault. He's not necessarily blaming the offense here, but he is being honest about how he has struggled in the new offense, David. So when you read this story and you hear these quotes, you think what?
Just that he seems lost. That's my first thing, is that he just doesn't know where he fits into anything. And, you know, we can't help but recall our conversation with him on Media Day and the kind of confidence that he was exuding. It was before he signed his extension, but he was coming off a strong offseason. He told us how much he wanted to start. The expectation was that he was going to start, that this was going to be, I thought, and you thought, and I think he thought as well, his strongest season in the NBA, that he was building towards this. Now he had his opportunity. No more Jimmy Butler. There was some clarity there. It was going to be him starting alongside Bam Adebayo. And we were both encouraged by that. And I think a lot of fans were, because the confidence was so complete. Like the way he assured us, oh, I see myself as a starter. Like that was that he was saying it. And I'm not messing around. This isn't going to be a positional battle. No, I'm the starter. This is my job to lose. And he did. And from that point forward, the whole season has just been such a complete he hasn't had a good grip on what to do, where he fits with his team. The injuries haven't helped, and he just doesn't know where his place on this team is anymore. And that's what I come up with, is that some of it is the offense, some of it is on him. And to your point, he does take credit and accepts that responsibility. And he doesn't know how to move forward. Like, he's trying to sound optimistic, but the confidence, almost borderline arrogant in the way that he spoke to us on media day and to where he is now, is such a stark contrast that I can't help but feel sorry for the way that that this season has turned out for him, because it was just such a complete departure from what he told us just a few months ago.
And not just from what he told us, from what the organization saw in training camp, right? That to me is the part that I cannot square in all of this. Is they installed this offense in training camp. Everything that we heard in Boca, every single day, Nico looks great. Nico looks great. Nico this, all positive. And you know what? It wasn't just lip service. They gave him the extension after that.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, it doesn't work. And that's what I can't figure out with all of this is, well, why did it look so good in training camp? And then when the lights come on and you're supposed to do it in a real game, now all of a sudden he looks lost. Because if he was looking that lost in training camp in this offense and looked like this was going to be the situation, if he didn't know what the offense was, wouldn't they have had signs of that in training camp? Right? It feels like this is a guy who aced every pretest to the SAT and then got to the SAT study hall and then was just like, oh my God, I forgot how to write my name on the paper. That's how reverse this is. It's and that's the part that doesn't make sense to me, David. I don't know. Maybe there is something to, hey, it's game speed. Now we're playing an opponent. Not everything is scripted in terms of the way. Not that the offense is scripted, but in a training camp, things are scripted. Like, okay, show up. We're going to do these drills, blah, 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 blah. And this is not the first time with Nico, right? Yeah. Where it's just something, right? I understand his rookie year, the lower back injuries sidelined him from, he only played 15 games. Okay, you can only do so much about that. The back injuries also played a factor in this one, but he's not pointing to the injuries. He's not pointing to this lower back injury, which we've talked about, I think, about a month ago, where it was like, that doesn't sound super awesome, where maybe he doesn't have the strongest back and he's going to have to maybe rebuild kind of the way that his body works a little bit here. But he's not pointing to any of that here. He's just saying, like, I couldn't really figure out the offense. And I'm like, didn't you have it figured out? What happened?
Yeah, it's not quite clear. It's a good point, too, because I do think that practices are one thing and games are something else, but the Heat is not a team that operates just based on what you do in practices. I mean, that does matter. There is some weight attached to that. And I think that's a point that we'll talk later on as far as why he's kind of in the doghouse the way he has been. But I think they were encouraged enough by his progress that they believed in him. And this isn't a show of good faith either. It's a business, ultimately. They're not going to be like, look, man, we like your progress and we believe in your potential. Right. So here's $40 million. That's not how any team operates.
This was not a personality hire.
Yeah. It's like, we really like you. And so here's 40 million, you know? So there should have been some kind of, I don't know, lining up of sorts between what they did in practice and what he was able to do in games. And it just hasn't looked that way. And so you have to wonder, though, if there's just a particularly short hook with Nico. And I wonder if that's the case, because he did lose his starting job almost immediately. And to go from one extreme to the other so quickly is very unusual, even for somebody like Erik Spoelstra. And I know a lot of people listening to the show are probably pointing to another player on that roster, Kel'el, who's been in and out of the starting lineup. But I don't think that we've seen the same kind of linear progression from Kel'el, the way that we were led to believe was taking place for Nico.
It's a good point, right? Because they get smacked by Orlando on opening night. Nico starts and then is immediately moved to the bench, right? Like, he almost knew what was coming. He says before that Magic game, I'm worried that if we struggle, I'm going to be the one to blame. They lose their first game, and then he goes to the bench. And that was the only game he started all season. And yet the Heat have not beaten the Magic all season. So it wasn't Nico's fault that they lost to the Magic. And I think it's fair to wonder, did Spo maybe overreact to that? I don't know, but it's not like he hasn't played. He's played 47 games this year, a total of 800 minutes, which isn't a lot, but it's not nothing either. And he hasn't been good no matter where he's been. And there's something to be said of, no matter if you're starting, coming off the bench, whatever, you got to do something. And to shoot 27% from three and to not be a factor on the boards and to look lost in the offense, it's like, are you going to look less lost in the offense if you're out there more? I don't know. Maybe more reps would be helpful, but that's what, again, training camp was for, and that's what practice is for. And Spo has done this, where if you're out of the rotation, but you're showing up at practice and you look like you're ready for, then you'll play. And obviously that hasn't necessarily been the case. We're going to continue this conversation about Nikola Jovic, specifically looking at what does he need to do to bounce back, and is this just sort of maybe even the end of Nikola Jovic's time in Miami? Does he need ultimately just a change of scenery? All of that and more coming up next year on Locked On Heat.
Spring is a natural reset point, and if there's one thing that can quietly cost businesses money, it's messy communication. Missed calls, scattered texts, no clear thread of who said what. And that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo. That's spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2 with over 3,000 reviews, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. It lets your entire team share one business number, so you never miss a call, a text, or an opportunity. And the part that you'll love most, well, everything lives in one clean thread. Calls, texts, voicemails. The whole team sees the conversation, so nothing falls through the cracks. And the AI summaries, well, they save serious time by logging calls and highlighting the next steps automatically. It just makes your business feel more organized and responsive. Make this a season that no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Locked On Heat. Join the Cookie Gang. You'll unlock ad-free episodes and entry into our private listener group chat on Discord, where we're hanging out daily. Check the link in the show notes or go to lockedonheat.supercast.com to check it out. Continuing this conversation about Nikola Jovic, he's at least owning up to it. And I do like seeing that, right? And there were, by the way, there was a lot of quotes on social media. If you didn't read the full Miami Herald story, and this is why I encourage people to read the full story, there are a lot more quotes than the ones that have been making the rounds on social media where it sounds like he's blaming the offense. And that's a conversation we're going to have here in a second about whether or not the offense does work or not. But he's not doing that. And I want to give Nico as much credit as possible for that. At the same time, David, there is something to be said about every year it feels like this is the year for Nico, and then it isn't. And we're 4 years in. And it's one thing to do this on a rookie contract. It's another thing where you're going to be making $15 million plus per year. Now we've got some problems. If 10% of your cap is tied up into a guy that can't crack the rotation, and I do wonder, like, how does he bounce back? Can he bounce back? Is he actually better than this? Because that's the one thing that he said in this story was he knows he's better than this. I tend to think he is better than this. I guess the degree is how much better. Is he better enough to be a normal part of the rotation, and frankly, worthy of the contract extension that he signed, David?
To answer your question, I feel pretty confident he's better than this, just because we've seen it, like not just in spurts here and there in the NBA, but also in international basketball. And I think that's where the difference is. And look, not to sound xenophobic in any sort of way, but there are European players who do wind up struggling at the NBA level, whether it's a cultural thing, a language barrier, or a style of play, or something like that. And for the record, I don't think that's the case with Nico, but I think he is struggling for whatever reason with confidence in a way that NBA players typically, or at least outwardly, don't. I saw this at least, and I think you did too. Josh Richardson is another one of those players, where a guy where his confidence level was not necessarily what you would think it would be for an NBA level player, where he would get into his own head in the middle of games and things of that sort. And he talked to me about that. It can get to you. NBA players tend to, again, outwardly shrug it off. It's like, yeah, these things happen. You just still go out there. And Nico's another one of those guys who just seems to wear his heart on his sleeve and can't seem to separate when he's not playing well and having to continue to make an impact or find a way to get through it.
I mean, every missed 3-pointer is a plea to the heavens, right? It's every single one. Yeah.
Yeah. He puts his head down. He starts trotting up court. He gets lost on defense. He comes back down, rinse and repeat. Or in the rare case, he hits a 3-pointer. And to your point, he throws his arms up and finally says, "Thank you." Like right. Almost in prayer, saying, "Oh, finally I get one." It's like, you can't show that. That's not how it works in the NBA. Like, you miss 10, you better hit that 11th. And that's the confidence. You know you're going to hit that 11th. You have to get out there. And I don't know that Nico has that. And the only time where he's looked that confident, honestly, is when he's playing alongside his countryman, Nikola Jovic. And so we're going to talk about the change of scenery in a second here. But I mean, if I was Denver and I wanted to unlock this team, I don't know what it would take to trade for Nico, but I would be making that call as much as possible because I think that is a player that they would certainly benefit from.
Well, does Nico need somebody to play off of like that? I think that's fair, right? You could argue that Nico's best moments in Miami has come alongside Jimmy Butler, right? And so it does kind of feel like for this guy who is talked about, especially by Heat fans, as maybe a point forward type and play Nico at point guard, he is clearly not ready for that, right? If he was ready to just do stuff on his own, he would be doing stuff on his own. But his best moments are playing alongside somebody with a lot of gravity, somebody who could actually, even more specifically, get into the post and kick out. And that's, by the way, something that he also talked about with this piece with Barry.
Tyler.
Is playing off of Tyler, but also playing off of Bam, getting like Bam in the post-ups and then the kickouts, and then Jimmy in the post-ups and the kickouts. This is where Nico thrives. I've always said Nico to me is less of a primary ball handler and more of a really good sort of second side guy where if he's getting the ball on a kick out, he can make stuff happen. And I really like I really like what he could do off of a defensive rebound in terms of pushing the pace, but I like him pushing the pace and then kind of finding somebody on a hit-ahead pass in open space more than just finishing. This is a guy who does need to play with someone. Yeah. And that's okay, right? That's most NBA players. The problem in Miami is when you look at the guys who have figured it out, like a Jaime Jaquez Jr., for instance, he doesn't really do well playing off of other players. He needs the ball in his hands. He's sort of the opposite, right? And in this offense, that does tend to work. Whereas in this offense, it doesn't really work maybe all the way for Nico. Now, I do think that there's a better version of Nico, even if just looking at the three-point shot. He's shooting 27% from three this year. We know he's better than that. 37% last year, 40% the year before that on a larger sample. He's a better three-point shooter than what he's shown this season. I do think that lower back injury is a big reason why that percentage dipped this year, and you hope that he can get healthy and on the other side of this just kind of find his three-point shot again. But other than that, like just getting back to where you were isn't going to be good enough to earn this contract extension, to be worthy of this contract extension. He's going to have to take that step forward, and that's the part where, David, I think you might be onto something. That might be where the change of scenery might be needed, where he can play alongside somebody who accentuates like sort of what he does well.
I agree. And at the same time, though, when you mentioned Jaime, and I think Barry did a good job of pointing that out too, that Jaime seems to be thriving in this offense as opposed to the way Nico has wilted. And you wondered, can he adapt his style to be more like Jaime? Can he have his own Jaime highway and be aggressive in getting to the rim and finishing at the rim? Or is that just not part of his game? Because I think obviously his size and speed, maybe he doesn't have the same quick burst as Jaime does, but I think given his size, he could probably be a high level guy who can finish at the rim. And you wonder whether or not that might be the nature of his game. Is he a guy who can just attack and just get to the rim easily and score that way and manufacture his own points that way?
It's why I've wanted him to do the things that we saw in EuroLeague or in Eurobasket, where he was getting that deep seal in transition, and Jokic was sort of finding him on a small. Like every time there's a smaller player in front of him, he should be taking that guy under the basket with him and then posting him up. That's where it is for Nico. His ability to run the floor at his size, with or without the ball, that's, to your point, David, that's where and he just, too often, something doesn't go his way, and he jogs down to the corner, and then he just stands there. What does Jaime do? He does stuff. What does Pella do? He does stuff. And there's just too many moments where Nico's just not doing anything out there. Now, there is that bigger question. when Nikola Jovic talks about the offense, I don't think that he was blaming the offense. I want to be fair to Nico here, but it has sort of generated a conversation about whether or not this offense works, or maybe, hey, is this offense not really suiting Miami's most important players, whether it's Nico on this extension or even a guy like Bam, who's had to find his spot in this offense. And he's done a good job of it, but there's obviously a version of offense that works better for Bam because we've seen that too. Does this offense work? We're going to answer that question next.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. You can bet just $5, and you can get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it so easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. The playoffs are already at another level. The energy's already there. And now when you're as invested in it as FanDuel lets you be, it just takes it to yet another level. And that's what makes it so exciting. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by TurboTax. It's tax time. For a lot of us, the old ways of doing taxes is, well, a lot. Trying to book an appointment, that's not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your tax documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's a relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. So head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment today. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Let's talk about this offense, because there's that's the natural part of this story that to branch off of here is, does Nico in some ways maybe have a point about this offense that it's maybe too difficult, maybe doesn't suit Miami's the strengths of Miami's most important players going forward? David, I'll ask you point blank. Does the offense work? And maybe more importantly, do you want to see this offense beyond this season?
I think it does work based on the personnel. And I think I do want to see it beyond what we've seen. It bogs down, and you'd want maybe somebody else that's more of an established playmaker, or maybe even a more consistent star level scorer, to be able to be the focal point of this offense. But I think it does work. And we've seen moments where it's looked incredible. I mean, their most recent win against Washington, that's the Wizards, but you score 150 points. That matters. That counts for something. So I think it does work. And it's up to Nico, in my opinion, then to kind of change or adapt to it moving forward, because that's you base the offense looking at your personnel on and what they're capable of and maximizing their strengths. And for Nico, whether it emphasizes his strengths or not, he has to be able to find a way to lean into that, because he's not the player that you can afford to bend your team towards. Like, you can't change everything to accommodate Nico. That's not how this works. So as we were talking in the second segment about how he needs somebody to create offense for him, or where he can play off of a guy like Jokic, that player might not be on this roster. That's a different offense, a different team. This team, you need guys like Norm Powell, Tyler Hero, etc., to be able to thrive. The fact that you've kind of leaned into the fact that Jaime can produce as much as he can. That a guy like Pella can generate the points he can. That kind of makes it incumbent on Nico to be able to make those changes. And so to me, I think the offense does work. It's just about how everybody can kind of fit into that and find their rhythm within that context, because that's what makes this team better, is when they play that way.
Does the offense work? Yes, there's no question that it works. There's no way to argue that it doesn't work, right? This is a team that had a bottom 10 offense for 4 straight years and now is 12th in offensive rating. It works. especially when you look at the personnel, the fact that they don't have that number one scoring option. Even their best scorer was out for most of the season in Tyler Hero.
Right.
The fact that they're this high in offensive rating shows you that it works. And I do think that Erik Spoelstra has sort of maximized the personnel, even if it doesn't, in a weird way, look quite right. Like, I do think, yes, you're right. You can't look at Nico, for instance, and be like, we got to make sure that we're tailoring our offense around that guy. But at the same time, you could look at Bam and say, we got to make sure that we're kind of making sure that we're, maximizing what he can do in this offense. And to basically just throw Bam into the wilderness and say, figure it out in this offense. And then for him to score 83 points in this offense is just, it's pretty remarkable. And to do it without Tyler Hero for so much of the season, and Norm Powell in and out of the lineup, and Wiggins in and out of the lineup, and all these things, I kind of think it's a minor miracle that this is somehow a top 15 offense. I don't think there's any question that Spo has maximized the personnel and maximized this group offensively. I don't think there's any way that you can debate that, right? Like, you look at them at 12th in offensive rating. Can you look at this roster and be like, they should be higher? No. How do you look at this group and say, with the injuries, and say, yeah, they should be higher in offensive rating? But that's one thing, and I'll put that over here for now. Do I want to see this offense going forward? Not really. I don't. It's a gimmick offense to me. I do think that teams have figured out parts of it. And the thing that you mentioned at the end of games where it does tend to bog down, that is a problem, right? And we might get a chance to see this offense in a playoff setting. I have a feeling it's not going to look as good, especially maybe in games 1, maybe in games 1 and 2. But as you get into the 3rd, 4th, 5th game of a series, and teams are more, they're more accustomed to playing it, and they're kind of in that rhythm, it's not going to look good, is my guess. At the end of the day, the NBA is pretty simple. You need a top guy to win at the level that teams want to win at. And the Heat don't have that top scorer guy. They don't. And when you do have a top scorer guy, you don't run an offense like this. You put the ball in that guy's hands, and you let him go to work. Now, I'm very much in favor of ball movement and tempo and all that stuff, but it doesn't look like this necessarily, where you have no pick and roll, you have no screen setting. I would like the Heat to get to a spot where they have a number one option who can run pick and roll with Bam, or some sort of two-man game with Bam, and where there are some screens being set that utilize Bam's strengths. Because I think the best version of this team is a team that has Bam in a secondary type of role with a top scoring threat who can play with Bam in a two-man game. And if you could figure that out, then the offense isn't going to look like this. There are elements of this offense that you can keep, right, in terms of the pace and the tempo and some of these other things that we like. But in terms of this specific offense, it's a gimmick. It's a gimmick that worked, but it's not something that to me is sustainable if you want to win at the highest level of this league.
Is this Chad Pennington and the Wildcat offense?
It's a little bit, right? That's a great callback. Yeah, it's a little bit like that. You can even argue it's the first year of Tua with Tyreek Hill and Mike McDaniel with the pre-snap motion and all this stuff. And it's like, whoa, my God, what are we going to do with this? And then teams figured out what they were going to do with it, and it got completely shut down from there. And McDaniel never had a counter for it, right? And Tua wasn't that quarterback who could provide that kind of counter. The Heat need that player to come in and be like, okay, all of this stuff that we did, that's a nice base. Let me come in on top of it. You can run this offense for 80% of the game, but in the fourth quarter, you better have somebody who can run a pick and roll, get an advantage on a mismatch, and then go to work. And that's what this Heat team to me is missing. We're going to end the show there. We got a good show for you coming up tomorrow. Big questions about Giannis' future in Milwaukee. We're also going to look ahead to what should have been a big series against the Toronto Raptors, but might not be anymore. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On Heat. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Heat so you get all of the latest episodes. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Join the Cookie Gang and get Locked On Heat ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to LockedOnHeat.supercast.com to join the club.